You've identified positions you'd like to apply for, polished up a resume. Hopefully, next step is interviewing. Remember, the goal of a resume isn't to get a job, it's to get you an interview, where you then get a chance to fill in the brief sketch of the knowledge, skills, and abilities that the resume provides. Here are the key concepts for our class to understand about interviewing. Remember, we'll cover some of these items in this lecture, but make sure you read the chapters to be sure you fully understand the concepts. Let's talk about basics. Then we'll talk about more with interview questions and how to answer them. Here's the key thing. So if you remember one thing based off of everything, it's that people hire based on the airport test. That's the idea, that they hire someone who they'd be okay stuck in an airport with on a business trip. What's your goal here? Come across in an interview like someone they'd want to work with. Do that, and you're in great shape with everything else. Now, interviewing, though, is a two-way experience. You're not just trying to convince the employer that you're a good fit. You're trying to find out if the position and the employer are good for you. You're learning about the company's trying to learn about you. There are two big categories of interviews: screening and hiring or placement. Screening interviews are actual interviews to determine if you meet basic requirements. That first phone call where they ask you, who are you? Are you still looking for a job? That is a pre-interview. It might come from an HR representative determining if you're a good fit. It could be the person hiring you. Now, with advances in technology, companies are using artificial intelligence, so AI, to screen candidates through online interviews. So the process of your interacting with an AI platform is going to help that employer decide if they ever want to have a human actually look at your resume or your interview. You attend a career or internship fair, or you ran into the State Farm representative in the hallways one day when we're on campus. All of that might be a screening interview. You should treat any contact from anyone at a company where you want to apply as a potential screening interview. One big piece of career advice that I use is that everything is an interview. People are always going to be assessing you for whether or not you're the right fit for the next promotion, for another position, or for just continuing to work with them. So once you've been screened, you move on to the hiring and placement interview. Hiring interviews come in a lot of different flavors, right? So some of us think of them as standard one-on-one interviews. So you're sitting across the desk from one individual, they're asking you questions, but there are so many other types. Your interview doesn't have to be in person. It'll likely right now be online. Many, though, are doing in person. It could be through Zoom or Teams or their own platform. And in those situations, you have to consider camera angles, your background. In fact, Quincia, our assignment for the class, is going to help you with all of that. You could have an interview over a meal. It feels more casual. It's not. Employers are looking at etiquette, how you conduct yourself, whether or not they can sit you down in front of another client or with other people at the business. A one-on-one interview means you meet with one interview. A panel interview means you meet with multiple at the same time. This can feel really intimidating, but it gives you the chance to make impressions on multiple people. It allows you to hear about the company from multiple perspectives and see how coworkers interact. Hint, did they like each other? A group refers to an interview where multiple candidates are interviewing at the same time. You might be interviewing with 4 or 5 other candidates. To clarify, a group is when there are multiple candidates. A panel interview is when there's multiple interviewers and one candidate. Group interviews can be awkward. You are all aiming for the same job. Employers are using them because they want to see how do you interact with other people and how do you work in a team. Sequential or serial interview is going to be several interviews ranging from one-on-one to group to panel or a mix that take place in a succession. So eventually you might get a schedule like this where you interview with human resources, move on to talk to development, and then you have a lunch interview and end with a panel interview. This is going to be tiring. This is completely common. I've had students where the employer will even fly them to New York. They're put up in a hotel room along with other candidates, and then they're given a 2 or 3 day schedule that's not just this, but also includes things like analytical tests. So personality tests, grammar tests, writing tests, programming tests, all might be part of what they're asking you to do as a part of a 1-day or even multi-day process. A stress interview is an interviewing style that companies use to gauge a candidate's response to stress. It gives the hiring team an advantage of how you'll respond when juggling various high-priority tasks, dealing with challenging clients, or facing a difficult coworker or manager. One place that they do this, my husband has experienced this, is in law enforcement, where some departments, not all, but some departments will just grill people to see if they can get them to break and run out of the room. You're probably never going to experience that in an accounting firm, but they might be looking for that if you're in a technical field or a field that's high pressure, so trading, to see how you're going to respond and then what you're going to do if things are weird. I have heard this happens in combination with meals too. So they'll ask you to a meal and then they will have a deal with the restaurant to bring you the wrong food to see what are you going to do. Are you going to speak up? Are you going to be rude? Are you politely going to say, oh, that's not my order, and then just let it go? The hint there, correct answer is, oh, that's not my order, and then move on. You assert yourself, but you're not an ass. So for the next part, for interview prep, research the company and maybe even the interviewer. That's an okay use of LinkedIn. It's not considered creepy. You don't come out and say, I was Googling your LinkedIn profile, but you do want to develop questions that make it clear you've researched the company and understand what the company does. You could ask about a recent product launch or talk about the community service work they do or the history of the company. Angle towards the area you're interested in. Don't just ask some random question or ask about the department that you're interviewing with. It can be a really great way to see how you align, if you do, with the company's mission. Having questions is not an insult to the interviewer. Instead, it signals that you're truly in the position and taking the interview and opportunity, truly interested in the position and taking the interview opportunity seriously. But ask good questions. Asking something that you could easily look up is not a good idea. Oops. Here are 4 sample questions. What's a typical day like for someone in this position? How have you liked working here? Can you describe the company's culture? What advice would you give me that would make me a successful hire? And I will tell you one that I will sometimes ask at the end of an interview if it seems like it's not gone well. What concerns do you have about me as a candidate? That gives you a chance to reply. Practice interviewing. No matter how you practice, it's a good idea to look at common interview questions and think about why the employer would ask that. That helps you think about how to construct your answer. Most interview questions will not be a surprise. Companies ask about the same ones. I have had students tell me they have gone to interviews and literally gotten the same questions that are in our book or in the handouts that I've given out. Don't memorize the answers. You just want to know generally how to stay on target, and that's what our Quincia assignment is going to help you do. In addition to Quincia, a couple other opportunities. There are CMC workshops, the BCC can do prep, and the Career Center. But I think the Quincia mock interview should be exactly what you need to get a good sense of what mock interviewing can do to make you better. All right, for the interview itself, here are some tips. 1, show up early. Now, that does not mean you're sitting in the waiting room awkwardly for an hour. You want to show up maybe 10 minutes early. But my advice to you there, get there, be outside of the building, in your car, or walking around, whatever it is if you're in a big city, before you go in. Dress appropriately. It shows an understanding of company expectations. You want to research the company to know what they wear. If you show up to a tech company, and say you move to San Francisco, you're interviewing at a tech startup, and you show up in a suit, you are out, most likely. On the flip of that, so the tech company would expect maybe jeans and a nice hoodie and clean sneakers. You show up in your jeans and your nice expensive sneakers and a clean hoodie to Deloitte, you are not going to get that job. I don't even know if they keep interviewing you. So you need to understand, what does that company expect? Smile. Research, and I've said this earlier in this semester, has found that people assume you're smart when you do. It'll make you seem more confident and help them relax. In American culture, you do want to make natural, positive eye contact. So you're not staring people down. You want to make eye contact in a almost conversational manner. Now, Quincia is going to help you with this because you need to aim for a certain percentage of eye contact with the camera as well as in person. And although I can say it's a natural eye contact, what does that even mean? So do the Quincia interview, pay close attention to what it says about eye contact. Now, normally I'd say have a firm handshake, but of course everything is different now than it was a few years ago. Some employers still going to expect that handshake, so ahead of time you might think, am I comfortable returning that if I'm interviewing in person? Or maybe they don't want to shake your hand, so you need to watch and follow their lead. And last, good manners. I have heard people show up chewing gum, show up well, even drunk, or not groomed, their phone on, all sorts of things. So just best behavior, hopefully that's obvious. All right, when you're interviewing, there's times to this. First off, you have about 90 seconds to make a really good impression. Those first 90 seconds are important. So think back to the concept of primacy and recency. It's true with interviewing too. First impression and how you end are going to stick with the interviewers. When you talk about what you're doing, demonstrate specific interest in that job. So know why you'd be a good fit, know why you're interested in it, and tailor that answer to the company. If you talk about being interested in a really dynamic, fast growth company, but they see themselves as traditional, then you're going to be out. And last two here, be a good communicator. Practice your interview answers in advance. You want to be positive, avoid weak words, and consider language choice. Same time, good communicators listen. Establish a connection with the interviewer, and that process will feel more like a give and take conversation. A good interview is just a nice conversation with someone. Here are some common interview mistakes. 1, people will seem distracted, and they could just be nervous, and it's how it plays out. Maybe you forget to mute your phone, or maybe you're worse and you actually are looking at a text. So for me personally, I've even gotten the feedback to just not bring my phone to this is with meetings, but not bring my phone to an important meeting, disconnect or put my watch onto airport mode so that I'm not getting anything that's going to distract me. You can overcome this if it's nervousness by smiling, make eye contact, and seem engaged. Now, some people are, and this I've seen this in some students, some majors more than others here in JSOM, and that's that they come off seeming arrogant or like they know everyone and everything. So confidence, critically important. Don't take it too far. So saying something like, I don't know why you wouldn't hire me, if they ask why they wouldn't hire you. Instead, you're going to use evidence why you think you add value to the company. So combat this, if you've gotten this feedback, with talking about concrete examples of what you've achieved and what you have to learn as well, and what you're looking forward to doing with a company. You want to make sure you're positive, and that's about employers, about jobs, even about your university. Even if one person, let's say your employer also went to UT Dallas and makes a comment about the UT Dallas parking and complaining about it, I wouldn't fall into that trap. I'd be like, oh, haha, yeah, sure. I think they've added some more since then. But don't fall into the trap of negative feedback. You want to think positive, and you want to think future. All right. And I've already mentioned with the wrong attire, you need to be sure that you're wearing what's appropriate for the job. All right. So right here, you think about which look is better for a job interview. Trick question. Where are you interviewing, and what's the code at that company? There's lots of places where the outfit with the casual gray blazer would be just as appropriate, and there's places where, let's go back to that imaginary tech startup in San Francisco, where the suit on the right would look stuffy. And how about this one? And again, same trick question. What are you interviewing for? And here, well, now the joke's old. You know very well. And I love that blue tie. But the one on the right would be a fantastic example of what to wear at a more casual company, or maybe even some student positions. I will tell you though, locally, if you're applying for an internship, I have had one person this is really negative feedback that she gave me, and I'm repeating it, but she said she was just so sick of students showing up in skinny jeans and sneakers with basically that outfit on the right. So skinny jeans, sneakers, and a nice blazer and shirt. In Dallas, it's generally a pretty conservative area. So the one on the left with the nice blue tie is going to be much more appropriate. And here, same general idea. I love the pink heels. All right, so that's a fun way where if you're interviewing somewhere really conservative to add just a pop. The outfit on the right, which I think is awesome for a workday outfit, might be considered less appropriate for an interview. All right, let's talk about interview answers. And let me back up on the close. If you have questions about that, let me know. I can provide you with lots of resources on how to get good advice for what to wear. All right, so with these, you might want to just pause. In class, normally I would have you pause and write out your answer to the question, so you might want to hit pause and write that out. If you've done that, then how'd you do? For most people, this is an awkward question until you get an idea of what employers are looking for. I'm going to guess that if you did pause and write it out, you probably started with something like, my name is Jane and I am an accounting major at the Naveen Jindal School of Management and I am going to graduate in 2020 whatever, and I am looking for an internship at a major accounting firm because I am really interested in blah, blah, blah. It's so freaking boring. And also they know that. They have your resume. So you need to think about how do you tell them what they want to hear? So we'll come back to this. The second is that sometimes people will go into telling your life story. So tell me about yourself, and they reply, I'll just use myself. So hi, my name is Sarah. I live in Allen, and I have a cat and a dog. I really love playing games on the weekends with my kids, although now they're getting better than me. And hiking, like that is my big thing right now. I just love to get out into nature. I'm not a serious hiker, more of a let's go enjoy the sunset hiker. They don't care, so don't do that either. I've also given out all this information about my status as a mom, as a parent. It's not good. The last way, and I will guess, there is about 5% of every class in JSOM that does this. Somebody who just keeps talking, like a 10-minute monologue. Online systems are going to cut you off, oftentimes at 2 minutes. So make sure you watch your time here. You want to keep it to 90 seconds. Think about the audience, and you might use this organization past, present, and future. So I'm currently a student, would be present. In the past, I became interested in accounting because blah, blah, blah. And in the future, what I'm really interested in learning more about and growing and doing and working at your company to expand, and that's where you want to go with it. Quincy will help you out on your answer when you do the mock interview, but this is a really good one to practice and rehearse. Here you're going to see a couple other types of interview questions. So common, behavioral, situational, and random or creative. Common ones are usually pretty easy. They don't need a long explanation. So that's why did you select UT Dallas? Why did you pick finance? What's your favorite class? What's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness? What do you look for in a supervisor? 30 seconds. If you're writing it out, 8 to 10 sentences, and in fact, I would write these out in Grammarly because then it will give you your speaking time. With behavioral questions, the interviewer wants you to tell a story. So think past experience, something that you did. These will be a little bit longer. A sample might be, tell me about a time you experienced a conflict with the supervisor. Describe a role you take in group projects. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. Situational questions have the same length expectations, but focus on hypothetical or situations in the future, not past experience. These kinds of questions often begin with, what would you do if? How would you handle a situation if? Asking these questions allows an employer to get an idea of your knowledge of the field and ability to solve problems. If you, pulling on recent current events, if you're listening to this video in 2020 or 2021, think back to with our Supreme Court Justice who was on the panel who said they couldn't answer hypothetical questions. That's not going to cut it here. And this goes into the last one. Whatever you do when they ask you a question, you want to think of some kind of answer. So they ask you, what kind of zoo animal are you? Or they say, I think I've probably used this in class if you've had me doing icebreakers. A penguin walks through that door right now wearing a sombrero. What does he say and why is he here? So you have to answer. You need to look like you're having fun, and that goes for all of these questions. All right, next. When it comes to interviewing, think about this like story time. So spill the tea, to use a current cliche. Kind of, maybe poorly. But anyways, you're telling stories. So in story time, just know the stories are going to make your answers memorable. They're going to provide evidence. So here's 3 examples of stories that you need to know or at least have ready. How would you handle a disagreement with a supervisor, a time you overcame a challenge, and a time that you made a mistake? Now, it might be that you look at this and you're like, well, I've never worked, I don't have a supervisor. Then talk about somebody else who is in a position of authority. That's what they're looking for. All right. You will need to know for this class the STAR and PARL methods. So these are two methods for organizing an interview answer. They're about the same. Really the big difference is that it provides a narrative arc so you don't find yourself starting to answer a question and end up 5 minutes later wondering, what have I done? Let me give you an example. So the interviewer asks you, tell me about a time you had to overcome a challenge. For the situation, the interviewer wants you to present a recent challenge and situation. The task, what did you have to achieve or resolve? The interviewer is looking to see what you were trying to achieve and what was your goal there. Your action, what did you do? So not what other people did, what did you do and why did you do it? What were alternatives? For results, what's the outcome? What did you achieve through your actions and did it meet your objectives? Add what you did learn from this experience at the end to show how you were constantly improving. PARL method emphasizes talking about the learning takeaway at the end. So what are general strategies for answering questions? In general, you want to answer questions thoroughly and ethically. Offer relevant information. So you're answering the questions being asked. If you didn't understand, ask for clarification. You're backing up your answers with a narrative. So an example, a story, not just saying, I'm smart, but telling them a story where they can figure out that you're smart. Remember to be kind. Now this is huge. You want to try and be positive, and it's stressful. There's a ton of stress management techniques that you can look up online for this. So breathing exercises, meditation, mindfulness routines can all help some of the anxiety, which is pretty normal, that can cause things like racing heart or shallow breathing. If you're asked a question and you don't know the answer and you don't know what to say that I haven't considered that before. Take a second, so you pause, and then think about how you could reframe and tell an answer. The big thing you do not want to do is refuse to answer, say you don't know, or just have nothing to say. All right, and show yourself compassion. You make a misstep, keep going. Try to show your experience. You're going to make mistakes in the workplace too. They want to see how you're going to respond. Let's talk about illegal and inappropriate questions. So what can interviewers not ask? Well, there are protected categories and you see them here. Interviewers are not supposed to ask about them because they are not supposed to use that kind of information in making their hiring decisions. Here are some sample illegal questions. We can see how the first two could impact hiring decisions. The last one seems a little more innocuous, right? Maybe they think your last name is cool, but maybe they're trying to get out of you something to do with national origin, ethnicity, or religion. So employers aren't supposed to ask these questions, but what if they do? So first off, let's talk about why they would ask that. Oftentimes you will be interviewing with people, let's say you're in that panel interview and they just pull in Joe off of some random team who's now going to ask questions. Joe has never been through HR training. Joe just got pulled in to be this outside person to ask you something specific about working on that team. So Joe doesn't know that it's not okay to say something like, oh, do you have any kids? Or, oh, how long have you been married, after they notice you're wearing a ring? That's because Joe is used to asking those types of questions conversationally. Maybe it was also a little awkward when he does it conversationally, but he isn't doing it necessarily to discriminate. On the flip of that, we know from the research specifically about law firms that there are absolutely people out there who will ask questions like that because they are going to discriminate you and not hire you. So what do? Because you don't know if Joe's a jerk or Joe's just not trained, right? So first, you could refuse to answer. Personally, I think the second option is going to be a better approach. So most illegal questions are asked when it's an untrained interview and the person's trying to be friendly and make a family comment. So with option 2, you might think about, why are they asking me this? Is this a legitimate concern? And then tailor the answers to speak to that concern. So they say, how many kids do you have? You reply, oh, well, 2, but I am really proud of the fact that I've never missed a day of work for my children being sick because I have such great family support. Because what are they really asking? Maybe it could be, are you going to miss work? Are you going to leave at 5? And that then you're going to do a big pause and think, but wait, do I want to work there? If their expectation is that I don't leave at 5 ever, or that I can't miss work because my kid is sick, you want to work somewhere that's going to be more supportive of whatever is going on in your life. Like, do you need to take your cat to the vet? Now, on the last one, you could confront them. You could tell the interviewer, oh, that's an inappropriate question. I could report you to the EEOC. Now, if you do that, you're not getting the job, hard stop, but maybe it's worth it. If you do that, it's not like flipping a table. It's just telling them it's inappropriate. Know that if you say that, you're not getting the job, but hopefully you'll end your time here at UT Dallas with enough offers that you can be selective enough to speak up when those situations are happening to you. In particular, if it's something where the company clearly is not following the laws and hinting that they might be making discriminatory decisions, what do you think is going to happen when that HR department is handling your taxes or your paychecks or the money that you're owed for paid time off when you leave? I would be really careful legally there if they don't understand the law. If it's a company that's actively discriminating against people, I would just take a hard pass. Take your talent somewhere else, because I know you're going to leave UT Dallas as a talent that deserves to be at a company that deserves you. All right, next, huge topic shift here. Say thank you. So after the interview, you've gone through your panel maybe, or you went and seen a thank you note. Double check it, proofread it, know that a lot of people don't. I have interviewed a lot of people this year who have just never said thank you, and that's awkward. Because if I have an interview, it will say interview 5 people, and one person sends me a nice thank you note or a follow-up who seems like the person who's most interested in the job. Now, don't send it from the parking lot. Don't send it from your phone after you walk out the door. You want to wait a few hours, so maybe that night or the next morning to send it. So I'm saying less than 24 hours. If you know they're making their decision in a couple of weeks, then I would send a handwritten note. It gives you this little gold star because most people don't do that, and that's only for a traditional company. Still a pretty good idea if you have the interviewee's address. All right, last thing there, should you connect on social media? Depends. I think that LinkedIn is really great in terms of just saying, hey, I had a great interview with you and I wanted to connect via LinkedIn. Thanks for considering me. Just proofread really carefully. No, they might not reply. All right, so let's look at our lecture notes overall. So you need to know the different types of interviews. Be aware of the times on the interview questions and the different major types of questions. Understand the difference between behavioral, situational, creative. Understand you need to keep talking. Understand STAR and PARL. And when should you then send a thank you note? The answer is always. So send that thank you note or follow up. If you have questions about follow-up, feel free to reach back out to me or to the Career Management Center. If you get rejected, let me go back to that question. If you get rejected, you don't get the job, what do? Send a thank you note. Because let's say there's 4 of you, you were second choice, and they offer it to someone else, but that person turns them down. Hey, you second choice, you're getting the job. And I've even seen that here at UT Dallas. All right, so interview skills, super important. We've covered different types of interviews. You know how to answer questions. Winging it's not going to cut it. Go in knowing there's popular questions interviewers ask. Prepare your answers. Have stories to tell. Use Quincia to get better at all of this and wow them. I know that you can do it.